Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Brian. How are you doing today? Yeah, the first row suck-ups, we get that. Seriously, on behalf of the university, the Strategic Planning Committee, and the executive team, I do thank you all for coming out today to talk about the strategic planning process. We are streaming this live, so I'm sure there's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people watching via internet. When I was preparing for some of my opening comments for today's meeting, before we hand it over to Renee, Bob, and Tim, I asked Renee, what should I say? And she said, just do part 2 of your speech you did on Friday. So if you got about 45 minutes. No one laughed at that one. Wow. Okay, serious a crowd. Today we are, what's that, Phil? I did. So it was 30 minutes Friday afternoon, 30 minutes Friday night. So this is the other 30. So it's the trifecta, so to speak. Why don't we go ahead and switch to the next slide. We are here to talk about the strategic planning process and where we are. And this will be most likely the last public town hall meeting with regards to the plan itself. And I want to talk briefly about that and frame some ideas and then give it to Tim, Bob, and Renee to go over some of the specifics as well as the committee chairs and then hopefully have some discussion and dialogue as we move forward. When we set this out, I was just kind of thinking back. Last fall, we came together across the street and we talked about the plan itself and the importance of the process that would lead to it and how it had to be open and inclusive. And the process itself is sometimes more important than the plan itself. And this process that we went through over the last 6 or 7 or 8 months in getting here is very dynamic. And it is something that, to be honest, last fall, I would not have imagined that we would have gotten to the point where we are now. We did start with, a simple vision to build on our reputation as one of the best student-centered, comprehensive universities in the nation. We want to ensure that Murray State University is indeed the premier university of choice. A very simple statement, a very simple set of sentences, but speaks volumes about our university. The vision about building on our student-centered, being among the best national recognized student-centered universities. It's something that's been in existence for quite some time at Murray State University. And it is our goal, it is our intention that as we went through this entire process, that everything that we put into the plan would indeed lead to be, would end up being that structure that would allow us to be a national leading student-centered university. That was the litmus test. If something did not measure up or would not support that, we didn't include it. And also, as we talk about the planning process itself, a lot of it is what we are planning to do, what we are going to do, but it's also sometimes about what we're not going to do. It's some of the things that will take us away from that measure and that will divert resources. This is about being focused. This is about being centered on a core vision and a core mission. And so again, it's about that cadre of actions that will lead us to be a national leading university. Now, as I did mention on Friday, we are, in many respects, a national leading university. We have great successes to build off of. But as we develop the strategic planning process, we talked about what will refortify that, what will make us better, what will position us and separate us from those universities and other competitors that are catching up with us. As we sat down last fall, we talked about the importance of this being a university-wide process. The plan itself is not my plan, it's not the vice president's plan, it's not owned by a single entity, it is the university plan. And when we present it to the Board of Regents at the June meeting, it will be the university plan. So we intentionally set up the entire executive committee to be reflective of the entire university. If you notice, we have the leadership shared governing bodies, we have the vice presidents, we have members, the leadership of the faculty senate, the staff congress, the Student Government Association. We had the faculty and staff and student regents on there. And then also the individuals that led the 4 committees were intentionally set to have a wide perspective on the university. As you know, on the next slide, We established 4 committees, one for each of the 4 strategic initiatives that we have forward. Each of these committees, we selected individuals that would have a particular expertise in them. We wanted to have it wide representative. We wanted to have different voices, clearly. But at the same time, we felt it was very, very important that we had the experts in the room. We had the individuals that knew those areas backwards and forwards, that knew what could be done, what could not be done, that knew how to move the needle, if you want to use that terminology, and those that would not. So again, we've diligently and committed to go out to those areas. For academic excellence, very faculty heavy. For student success, very student affairs oriented and students engaged in there. On the community engagement one, individuals that deal with the community and community members. And then obviously for the scholarship, research, and creative activity, those individuals that have particular expertise in those areas. As we talked about the timeline, again, we wanted to move forward as rapidly as possible, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure, again, it was an open and inclusive process. We are at a point now that is very exciting because we have a near final document that will be presented to the Board of Regents for final adoption on June the 5th. We will begin implementation. As soon as it's adopted by the board, we will start the implementation process. As part of that entire process over the past year, multiple opportunities for the community to be engaged. 20-some odd committee meetings, all the executive committee meetings, the ability to give feedback through email, through web, through suggestion boxes, the old-fashioned way of having suggestion boxes throughout the area. And each of those mechanisms, or even through the comments through the text, each of those areas developed thoughts, ideas, comments. I also have to say that just walking across the campus, having students, faculty, staff, and community members stop me and talk about it, about how they felt some of the ideas could be implemented in their particular area, our various ideas and objectives. Just today, we were in Katie's at a Rotary meeting this morning, and 2 of the individuals came up and talked to me about the community engagement outside to work in Trigg County. So again, this has been a very encompassing and a very worthwhile project. A good strategic plan will be focused. And in some of our discussions with the faculty and staff, some people say, oh, you got a lot of things going on. Yeah, we do have a lot of things going on. But basically, there are 4 strategic initiatives. How do we enhance the academic quality and the academic culture of academic excellence? How do we ensure that we promote a dynamic and diverse university that is focused in on student success? And how do we make sure that we're able to have a culture of research and scholarly and creative activities that will advance knowledge? And how do we engage with our communities that we serve? I mean, when you really think about it, what we as a university are about, all of our activities can be boiled into one of these 4 areas. And my new love of math, the Venn diagram that we'll talk about at the very end of this project, on how many of these activities actually interlink. If you have just a research and scholarly activity and creative research approach, it helps with student success. It helps with the academic side. And it also reaches out to our efforts with the community. By focusing in on the student success, it makes the academic side that much better. It also helps with scholarly activities because we know from research that students who are engaged in research with faculty are more likely to be successful as they engage. And we also know if that research is about real-life projects affecting real-life businesses or nonprofit or other cultural organizations, it too will be that much better. So again, that Venn diagram, that linkages is so very, very important. This plan, as I mentioned, starts technically on July 1 or as soon as the board adopts it. But I do have to point out that through this process, we have discovered, better yet, rediscovered some aspects about Murray State University that we've already started moving on and recommitting to. Thinking about the type of students that we admit, how we treat students throughout the entire process, from advising to matriculation in a specific college to graduation. How we engage our community members in the life of our students throughout the entire process. How we start thinking and evaluating and what does it mean to have scholarly activity and how do we quantify that? How do we promote and project ourselves to our peer institutions for our national rankings. And in all of those discussions, that was part of the strategic planning process, we already started talking about how to implement some of those type of things. The Honors College is a great example. Some of our new admissions criteria and modeling is another great example that will be able to be under this umbrella and make this university that much better. With that as an overview, what I'm going to do now is hand it over to Renee. There's a question. They got the answer, yes. And then she will start leading the discussion about the 4 specific strategic initiatives. We will then conclude with a discussion of the next steps. Because as we mentioned in the process and throughout the entire several months of leading this, is the process is extremely important. The plan obviously sets the guidelines, but what is also critical is how will it be implemented, how will it be kept alive, will it just sit on the shelf, or is it something that truly will be used for the next 7 years? So with that, I hand the microphone over to Renee.
Great, thank you. I think we also need to thank Dr. Davies for having this process and being so integrated for all of us to be involved. One thing I would like to do is to recognize the committee chairs who are here today. Murphy Smith is teaching for us, so that's, he said he could not be here. Dina Byers, if you would raise your hand or stand, thank you very much, Academic Excellence Chair. Brian Van Horn led us in the community engagement, and Fred Deitch also led us in the student success. So there are lots of people involved, but sometimes, you know, when you have to serve as, or ask and cordially agree to serve as chair, it's a lot of responsibility on top of your normal obligations. So thank you very much. I am going to turn this over to Dr. Todd because you are leading the academic excellence component, and then we'll switch back and forth throughout this process.
Stream, you think? Is this for the stream more than anything else? Thank you, Dr. Pfister. And Dr. Pfister has done a tremendous job in shepherding this process for the last 8 or so months. So she really has been a driving force of all of this success. I echo what you said about the President's leadership and the 4 chairs. What the chairs have done, really some tremendous work that's gone into this, and under the spirit of shared governance. That's been a key point and a key pivotal point in how this president has focused on the strategic planning process in this last year. So just using one example from the standpoint of academic excellence under Dr. Byers' leadership, this is just one of the goals. And I'm not going to just read it to you because you all can read, obviously, we're in higher education. But one of the goals is creating and enhancing our programs that's going to propel us forward into being the premier public university and, in fact, the university of choice. And then you see objectives underneath those goals. Those are going to be measured. And there's going to be definitive measures associated with those, and we're going to have a scorecard. I think we're going to get into a little bit of that later on. So that's just one example. Well, here we go. Here's another theme of it. The measures associated with that. Increasing the Honors College by 25%, increasing our national rankings. We've been in the top 25 in the U.S. News and World Report for 25 years. You know, we're a top-tier university in those adjudication venues, but we've never been number 1. So there's room to improve there. So some of the aspects of this strategic plan focuses on getting us perhaps to number 1, or at least improving our rankings. And as you can see, there's some strategies associated with it. Those strategies throughout this document that you have, those are just suggested strategies. There's going to be other strategies that are going to be implemented. Some of the suggested strategies are probably not going to be implemented. This was just the committee's, the executive committee's attempt to try to create some behavioral change with relation to what this plan is. Student success. Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Dean. I may or may not cover any of this, so I'm not going to read it to you for sure. But President Davies, thank you for your leadership, and the chairs that are here, thank you for your leadership. Fred was the chair of student success, so he worked on a lot of this. This is 7 months of work now. And as I look out in the audience, many of you have been to many of the committee meetings. Some of you have been to all the committee meetings. Some of you have been to the town hall meetings, and some of you have emailed or texted or called or requested meetings or whatever the case. And I think we've accommodated everyone through that process, and we appreciate it. And there may be more questions today, and we'll obviously address those too. In the student success area, arguably, there's little that's more important than this particular area. This measures how our students are doing, both as they come in and as they leave. As we enter the days of performance funding and those discussions in Frankfurt, there's some very specific measures, a couple that will be up here. The very first one, graduation rates. This is something that's being looked at very, very closely at our peer institutions. We're already at the top. We're doing extremely well. We have a lot to be proud of. But again, the 6-year graduation rate today is 53.1%. That means 47% don't complete, approximately, in a 6-year period of time. So we want to move that measure forward over the next several years. That's something, a lot of debate, discussion, looking at top institutions, those that score and review much higher than Murray State University, how they're doing also. So we've looked at that. Retention rates would be the same as well. So again, the strategies, as the Dean pointed out, these are encouraged. Some of them are strongly encouraged from that standpoint, but also these committees have come up with these items, these plans, these documents as it relates to where we are today. So these strategies are recommended. They could be tweaked. They may change. Some of them may go away in their entirety. I'm not sure what's on the next slide. Okay. But thank you all again. And all of you who especially have participated in this process, thank you.
And these two gentlemen need to be thanked publicly because they've kept me on track, right? We have multiple meetings and they let me just talk and then we work through things. So it's very open process, let's put it that way. So research, scholarship, and creative activity. We are about encouraging students, faculty, and staff to work together, and this is one way to do that. And it also tailors back into student success, academic excellence, and even community engagement. So within this, if I can get this to work. Okay, great. So I just wanted you to see a couple of measures and strategies here. One of the biggest impacts that we have is on students. So increase by 20% the number of undergraduates and graduate students who have an opportunity to do research. With that, we have a great effect on our community as well because business partners are involved in that. There are strategies here, as you see, some of them relate to cross-disciplinary and collaborative efforts, but we are all a part of this. If you feel like that you're a staff person and don't have an effect on this, what you say to a student who may want to go into something that a different faculty member has an expertise in, you can affect that change. So internships, service learning, all of that is encased here. And then for the last initiative, I will turn this back over to Dean Todd.
Thank you, Dr. Pfister. The community engagement under the leadership of Dr. Van Horn, they also did a tremendous job. Just a few of one of the goals there, engaging with our many communities to assist, the betterment of society. That sounds lofty, but the objectives bring into light some focused behavior that we are going to try to do, and then the measures that you see. One of those, the last one, conduct an economic impact study to determine our regional impact. We did that as a university about 12 or 13 years ago, so it's time to do another one. And the statistic, many of you in the room know, but some of you may not know, if you go to Dunkin' Donuts and spend $1 for a cup of coffee, in rural America, that dollar will turn over in this town 9 times before it leaves. So there's a tremendous impact that this university, the payroll, the amount of people that are here, the student workers, the students coming just as students paying tuition, there's a huge amount of impact that occurs, and we need to quantify that in today's dollars to help us at the legislature, to help us, in other venues, to help us with parents. So that's just a quick overview of the 4 quadrants, if you will, of what this strategic plan is focused on with, with measures, with objectives, measures, and with strategies to make a difference.
Great. So here is the Venn diagram, okay, a 4-circle Venn diagram. Here we go, all excitement, hard to see the colors. But the idea is that all of these have a synergistic effect. Right? No one is a silo. And what we're trying to do is to get into that shield or the sweet spot there. So within this, all 4 initiatives is a focus on rigor, relevance, and excellence. If we don't have the rigor to provide to our students, then they won't see the relevance and they will never strive to be excellent. We've got to make that a positive statement for all of them. So we're always talking about greatness, but greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice. And we as a university have an opportunity to make a conscious choice and to be integral a part of this plan and to affect change. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Davies, who's going to speak to some questions that we've had about ownership and how this plan will be implemented.
I'm part Italian. I got to speak with my hands. Through our discussions over the past 7 months or thereabouts, there's been a discussion about, okay, so you do this plan, so what? You get it done, you call it, you're going to be done in a 7-year time frame, and even the time frame has been discussed a little bit. What's the next step? How do we know that it's going to be something that will be used, something that will guide us, and something that will move forward? One of the key things, and actually, let me take the pointer thingy. When you look at the goal, that's the ultimate prize for that specific area. Then each one of these has three or four, or in case of community engagement or scholarship, 2 objectives behind it. So when we set up the measures, for example, raise the educational attainment level within the university's primary service, we established very key specific measures below that. And one of the things that we did with each of these measures behind it, there is a specific number, a specific goal, or a specific action that needs to occur. In some cases, the action is did it or did not do it, a yes or a no. In others, in a case like this one, it's increasing the 64.5% rate, or going from a student retention of a freshman from 72% to 78%, or increasing our graduation rate from 54% to 58%. Very specific goals. And what we're doing as we move forward is developing a scorecard. A scorecard that will have each specific measure down the right-hand side, a baseline number that will establish where we're starting, and then throughout the time frame, throughout the 7 years, having specific goals and targets for each of those areas. Depending upon the specific target, some of them may be accomplished within the first 2 or 3 years. Others may not start for the first 3 or 4 years. If we're going to start measuring for example, and start having a significant influence on our graduation rate, we need to outline that out, that it's going to start to have an impact several years from here. 4-year rate, making changes right now will not impact our 4-year rate for 4 years. And so again, by having those specific measures and goals and outlines over the time frame of the plan is very, very important. Also, right next to each measure is an office, is a position. And in some case, that is the person, we call it ownership, and that might not be the right word. But it is the individual office or a group of offices or individuals that have the most influence on that specific area and or has the most readily available access to the data for that specific area. So for example, when we start talking about emissions, the owner of that goal and those activities is Fred Dietz in the emissions area. Makes logical sense. When we start talking about various other measures, it will be the provost, it will be the vice president of finance and administration, it will be myself, it will be someone else that has that specific area. That doesn't mean that it's high or dry if they make it or don't make it. But again, we need to have an office or a set of individuals that will take ownership of that area. And by having, again, the specific goals outlined throughout the time frame that they will help develop. So again, this is not me or somebody else going to Fred saying this is going to be your goal. We gave them the parameters of where we're starting and where we need to end, and working with them to say how do we get to those points. It's just like the strategies. The strategies are suggestions. These are ways in which the community has come together and say, here are some things that we think we can do better. Does this make sense? And allowing the experts to determine if that is the case. So as we start off this first year, a lot of it is going to be measuring what we need to have. In some cases, we have that data already. In other cases, it is codifying what does it mean. For example, if you ask all the deans about research and scholarship and creative activity, Each one has a slightly different definition and way that they accumulate it. So part of year one for that area is to get a handle on that aspect alone. And that's very important. I think as Bob Jackson mentioned, performance funding is becoming a reality for us in the very near future. And that will be part of our performance funding measures. So again, tying this to a broader picture is very, very important. In a meeting that we had last week, I think it was Dana who mentioned and said, what happens if we have a change in president? And I said, I haven't even been invested yet. How could we have a change in president? But this, and I wanted to point out, this is not my plan. This is not the president's plan or a single person's plan. It is the university plan. And over the next 7 years, not at the president level, hopefully, we'll have some changes. I mean, people will move in and out, and we will have changes. The goal of this plan is to make sure that we have continuity. By having these timelines, by having this shared ownership, that too will create a sense of ownership by the entire university and keep it alive for the next 7 years. Also throughout this process for the next 7 years, we will have State of the University addresses. We will have an regularly updated account on this on the website. Some of these metrics will move on a quarterly basis, some will move on an annual basis, but what we'll do is be able to have all of the metrics up on the website and some very key specific ones highlighted that will drive that will drive the overall use of the plan. So again, we started off with this process of being very open and transparent and inclusive. That will continue as we move forward. Also, some of these metrics are very high achieving. They will not be easy to achieve in of themselves. Moving our graduation rate by 5 percentage points may not sound like a lot to some. To me, to Fred, as I see as he nods his head, is indeed a significant lift. We cannot be afraid to fail. We cannot be afraid to fail. When I was, as my dad mentioned on Friday, I used to play tennis. I was a very, very competitive tennis player. And here is the secret to winning every single tennis match. Always play somebody who's a lot worse than you are. Now, I do have to say this. I am hoping Alan is paying attention to that, and as we schedule next year's football season, that might be a case. But think about it. If you want to achieve every goal, if you want to win every match, we're at 73 roughly retention rate right now. Let's set a goal of 70% and just let's not go backwards. But by setting at 78%, setting that ambitious goal, if we get there halfway, or 3/4, we will have made a significant step and advanced this institution. If we achieve that goal, we have done a remarkable job. And so we do need to set those high goals. We do need to set that expectation. Not all of these goals, not all of these measures are out of our reach. None of these are out of our reach. Some will stretch us more than others. And the important ones will definitely stretch us. But as we set our plan, as we go through the process, each and every year, we will continue to reevaluate, we will continue to reassess. We will look at the strategy and say, are these indeed working? Are these moving towards our ultimate goal? And again, if we just set low standards, how do we measure that? How do we measure if we're being successful or not? And so those are some of the key aspects that we need to move forward on. This is an ambitious plan. All of the things will not be achieved. Hopefully a majority of them will be. And again, the ones that we don't achieve, even just by making steps towards that, and by analyzing where they stand and how we move in that direction, will make us a better institution. Now, having said that too, I will say that each of the numbers, each of the goals that we have set forward are not just wags pulling out of the air. We look at our peer institutions. We look at those institutions that we want to emulate. If we want to be one of the top public universities in the South, if not the entire nation, what do those institutions look like? What are their retention rates? What are their graduation rates? What are they doing to enhance academic quality and excellence? How are they going out and doing the various aspects that will move their institution forward? What can we learn from them, bring to Murray State University, and make it our own? Again, this is not just about taking a program or a project at X university and plopping it on Murray State. It's about how do we make it our own, how does it fit within our own culture and our own ideas. And to me, that's also the power of the strategic planning process, because again, as we develop the process, as we develop the framework, as we develop the metrics, you'll notice that we did put strategies out there. But we want the people that are intimately involved with implementing and making those decisions to be designing those strategies. We set the goal on high and have it go down, and let those that are at the ground level, at the point where the rubber meets the road, to make those ideas in terms of strategies, to make it their own. These are exciting times. We've got a lot of shifts and changes for us at the state level, performance funding being one of them, economic conditions shifting, technology shifting, everything else. What this strategic plan does is provide us the focus to control the things that we can control that will indeed make us a premier university that is focused in on the success of our students. So with that, I'd be more than happy to direct questions to Bob, Tim, Renee, Fred, or anyone else. Questions? As you think about questions, here are some of the next steps. We will present the finalized plan to the board at the June 5th meeting. In between now and then, as you have a chance to read and digest and think about it, send me, Renee, Tim, Bob, any of the members of the executive committee, emails, questions, thoughts, ideas. As Jackie and I and others are walking through our budgeting process right now, we're doing a lot of thinking about, as we do the new year, where the resources and those type of things need to be started to apply to. As we go through the budget process next year, this will be the guiding light. I will say that again, this will be the guiding light as we develop the budgets for forthcoming years. We need to invest in programs that will make a difference in these areas. We need to be thinking about reallocations. We need to be thinking about the things that we currently do that no longer need to be done, and utilizing those resources to move our university forward. So please send your ideas. Please share your thoughts. It's very, very important that even though we're nearing that final end of presenting the final plan, that you continue to have those dialogues and those thought process of how we can make a difference here at Murray State University. Seeing no hands rise, what I would suggest is, oh, this is easy. And Don Robertson will now talk about the executive team will stick around. If you have direct questions or thoughts or ideas that you want to talk to us personally about, we'll be here for you, because again, it's important to have this dialogue. It is through the interactions, I will say this, it is through the interactions that we've had over the last 6-7 months through this process that a lot of great ideas happened. I started with a very simple premise and a few kind of guiding principles. The committee, the committees, and the input have taken it from there. And that to me is absolutely amazing. I also have to say and commend the university as a whole, that when I started this process, I actually had a conversation with my dad about this and moving a strategic planning process through a university. And he said, "You're going to do this in a year? Are you nuts?" I know, I need to go talk to you now, Joyce, right? But we did. And we did it because of the people, the faculty, the staff, the community members came together and said, what is the best for Murray State University? And a lot of ideas came forward. A lot of ideas that have been percolating up are now being formalized. And to me, that's the exciting part, that we can move this forward. That to me is the exciting part. The exciting part for Jay Morgan is that the III forms, this will be the last year that you have to do III forms. So he was happy about that. We'll replace it with another form. Don't worry about that, but we'll get there. But seriously, this is an important part. And so again, thank you very much. The executive team will stick around to answer any questions, to hear any comments, and to have this good dialogue continue to move forward. Thank you very much. And as always, go Racers.